Now let's go to the most fun part. Probably everyone was expecting it the most. Is the part where we compare the two charts. But I want to tell you that you always have to start first with the moons and look at the moons in depth. And the first part of the compatibility, the first big half will be about looking at both moons of the two people. Why the moons? Because the moons is your emotional needs. And in relationships, you want your needs to be compatible. You want to have the same emotional needs or the same ways of expression. The moon shows how you feel when you're, at home, when you're relaxed, when you're, when you're at your most personal level. And if you feel unrelaxed or tense or incompatible on that level with a partner, no matter how great sex you have, no matter if you have mutual businesses and goals together, which is the sun, or if your Venuses are fantastically combined, which is like the strong sexual attraction. If you're emotionally not compatible, in the long run, this relationship will be just not as satisfying, because the moon is the planet of happiness, first of all, of emotional contentment and satisfaction. So if you do not have this emotional, if your moons do not meet on this level, if they're incompatible on this level, often people just sooner or later drift, or it might happen in a bang that they separate one day, or they constantly, if the compatibility is constantly in their face, if their emotional needs are different, it just withers away, or just too much pain, too much drama that happens. One person needs one thing, the other person needs another thing. They're always clashing and butting heads, so such relationships are very painful. But again, if you have good capacity for relationships, what we studied in the previous videos, if you're someone with great sun, if you're the man, good 10th house, you'd be good, you'd be easy to be in relationships. But you might attract still relationships where your moons are incompatible, but you will do, even though your needs are incompatible, if you have good capacity for relationships, you'll be able to do the most with that relationship. But someone with poor capacity for relationships, even if he attracts a good compatibility, he can screw it up, because he's naturally a pain person, he's naturally, let's say, unskilled at doing relationships, he has low ability to feel happy in the relationships overall, So often, again, as we said, people would be in important relationships which don't have compatible moons. Very often, this is usually when someone has one of those factors I showed you before, like Venus with Saturn, Venus with Rahu, Venus with the Sun, Venus debilitated, Saturn in the 7th house, Rahu, Ketu. Such people often attract more often, incompatible relationships, because it's part of their path in life to try to learn how to compromise when the needs of two people are clashing. But anyway, let's talk about there are three, and we're going to look at the moon at different angles. We're going to look at the moon in regards to its sign, which is the solar sign, the zodiacal sign, that there are 12 zodiacal signs, we know about that. But we're going to look at the moon also in regards to its lunar sign. There is another zodiac. It's not only the solar zodiac, which is tropical, which is based on the relationship between the earth and the sun, the equinoxes and the solstices, basically the seasons. That's why the zodiac is tropical. Even in ancient Vedic astrology, the ancient Vedic books, they said the zodiac of the sun is based on the seasons, on the equinoxes and the eclipses. And the solstices. It's not based on the stars like nowadays a lot of Vedic astrologers use it. But the ancient book says the 12 sign zodiac is a solar zodiac based on the seasons, on the solstices, on the movement of the sun in regards to the earth, not on the stars. While the moon zodiac is based on the constellations, because you can see the moon only at night, and you can only see its movement in regards to the stars, because you see the stars at night. During the day you don't see the stars, so you don't measure the sun's movement in regards to the stars. You measure it in regards to wherever you see it rising every season, every month, which is the seasons. But when it comes to the moon, the moon has its own zodiac, which is sidereal, and it has 27 mansions. They're called in Vedic astrology nakshatras. In Western astrology, we also have them in the West. They're just not widely used. We call them in the West lunar mansions. They're Arabic lunar mansions, you know. And they have the same meaning. They're based on the stars. They're based on small constellations of stars, basically. And these 27 lunar zodiac signs, we're going to look at them. They're so important because they're like the soul of the moon. And they show so much about the personality. And we're going to compare both of those. And first I want you to go to the male's chart. And basically, let's start with the first thing. The first thing that I always want you to check when you do compatibility is go and see if these two moons have something called obstruction. Basically, this is one of the two big blemishes. There are two really big blemishes that can happen in compatibility between moons, which make people so incompatible that it almost never happens. Only once I've seen in my practice someone with having obstructions between their moon. That was in a marriage for 2 years with their husband, and they separated totally, you know, totally having had enough of it, you know. And I don't even remember which lunar constellations obstruct each other. You have to always check them in the table, in the manual that I give you. Or if you have color software, it calculates it for you. This is a software that my teacher, Ernst Wilhelm, does. It comes to you and it shows you immediately. But if not, you can do it by hand, by eye. And this is so important. If you have this obstruction between your moon constellations, moon nakshatras, constellation nakshatra is the same. It's almost never like the universe does not allow you to be together. And not that it's not even that your personalities dislike each other. They might be strongly into each other. It's not part of your path in this life. It's like karmic ban of you to be together. I don't know if you've seen the film The Adjustment Bureau. And in this film, basically the heroine and the hero, they keep bumping into each other and they so much like each other, but there's like workers from heaven or from the fate people, you know, fate from the beings that govern our fate that keep separating them because they don't want them to be together. They keep putting obstructions in front of them so they cannot meet at the same time, so their lives cannot intersect at the same time, you know, and it's almost impossible. Like in the movie, they finally managed to be together, and for such people who have obstructions between their moon, it's almost equal to a miracle for them to be able to end up together for long periods of time. And how do you find if you have obstruction? You go to the planetary detail table, you look at your moon, like I'm showing you here, and look at the name of the nakshatra. Here, basically are given the Vedic names. We also have names, Arabic names, like Western names for the lunar constellations, but my calculator uses the Vedic ones, so let's use those ones. And for example, I'll give you an example. My moon falls in the constellation of Magha, in the nakshatra of Magha. And there is someone that I was in love with since I first saw him at high school when I was 14 years old. And I even yesterday dreamt of him, you know. Even yesterday, I still keep dreaming that I bump into him and I want to be with him, you know. That's like 20 years ago. And his constellation, lunar constellation, is in Revati. And if you see from the detail table, Revati and Magha have obstruction. So when the moon of one is in Magha and the other in Revati, there is obstruction. And each lunar mansion can be obstructed by another one. I think only three. There is only three that obstruct each other that have two obstructions. Only three of them have two obstructions each, but all the rest of the 27 constellations have. So basically, all the 24 constellations have one other lunar constellation that obstructs them. So basically, this guy who I have obstruction with, the moment we saw each other, we were like, sparkles. It's not necessarily the case, but we had a great compatibility otherwise. His moon falls in exactly on my sun. My sun falls my moon falls exactly on his sun. It's like the double whammy soulmate feeling. So I'm sure we've been in past lives together. I'm sure we have, you know, But in this lifetime, because we have the obstruction between the moons, our lives just do not meet at the same level. Whenever I was single, he was with someone. Whenever he was single, I was with someone. Whenever we were both single, I went to live in a different country. Then he got married and he came there to the same country where I was to work. And but then he was married and I was already in a relationship. So never life puts you in somehow to meet, always the circumstances outside something obstructs you being together. You know, like in the movie The Adjustment Bureau, watch it. It will show you very much what having an obstruction between the moon constellations means. And I used to torture myself so much. Why? Like I have such strong, intense feelings for him. I can feel he has the same. Even 5 or 10 years we meet each other and we ask about each other and we meet occasionally and we speak how wonderful it could have been or whatever, you know, but it's just we're never there at the right time. And I used to torture myself why this is happening when we have such great compatibility till I discovered this ancient Vedic technique of the lunar constellations which totally explained it, and I no longer beat my head now, and I've just accepted it's not going to happen. I don't want to go against fate. I don't want to bargain with fate. Or if you do it despite all the obstacles, again something will backfire. If you start being together, just things somehow will be blocking you all the time. There will be a myriad of difficulties around you which make it almost impossible. So I accepted it and I finally have peace with it. I dream of this guy from time to time, but I said that's it, you know, I let it go. So it's good when you see someone who has obstructions between their moon, even if they have wonderful compatibility overall, just tell them it's going to be very tough. I mean, like, but the ancient sources, they say, no matter how big blemish is, and this is the biggest blemish, no matter how big the blemish is, if two people love each other, they can work over it. But if they both have poor capacity for relationships, or if at least one has poor capacity for relationships, or even 1 or 2 poor factors for happiness in relationships, like we talked in the previous videos, if they have obstruction, it's almost impossible to make it. I mean, like, I haven't seen a single relationship with obstruction work. Maybe if you find such, please make sure, tell me. I'm curious to see how their life developed and why. Maybe these people are very healthy emotionally, both of them. Maybe they were able to cheat fate somehow. And I'll be glad. I like when astrology doesn't work always. I like to have the sense of freedom, you know, of free will. But this is one of the biggest blemishes. No matter how many wonderful compatibility factors they have between each other, if they have obstructions, it will be close to impossible to be together. Maybe one day, but who knows? Maybe it's not for this lifetime. Okay, so this is the first and most important thing to look at between the moons. If they have obstruction, if they don't, already they have the green light to try at least being together.